Come and time travel with me, but we're not going to travel in a DeLorean to do time travel today. We're going to travel in these three cars. We've got these ones to choose from, and the unfortunate thing is when we do time travel with these three, they only take us to 1 year, and that is 2012. The year 2012, these three cars were the three most popular cars on sale that year, and the most widely available and almost the only choices you had if you're buying an electric vehicle. And when I was looking for my first EV, these are the only three choices I had. So I had, of course, we all know, the Tesla Model S. And this one is maybe a little bit less known, but still well enough known. It's a Nissan Leaf. And then the last one here, which is probably not very well known at all, which is a 2012 Mitsubishi IM. And then those are the three choices you had. There were others available, but in limited release. They weren't available in all jurisdictions, so they weren't available where I was living. But when I was looking for my first EV 2012, these are the three choices I had. So you had really expensive, and then too expensive for what it is, and then too expensive for what it is. So those were your choices: expensive and more more expensive. So let's take a look at these cars and see what they look like, and come back with me to 2012 and see what the world looks like. So yeah, there were very few choices back in the day in 2012. We're really lucky today in this day and age where we have a lot of options, a lot of choices for electric vehicles, and there were just not very many choices back then. These are the three you could pick from, and you know, let's start with the most familiar probably to all of us is the Tesla Model S, and that one just came out in 2012 in very few, low quantities, and there were very few of them. And of course, it was very expensive at the time. You know, the Tesla strategy was to sell the highest value vehicles. So they were selling the Signature line, they were selling the Performance line, they were selling the Founders Edition, etc., etc. So they were extra expensive. The less expensive ones weren't coming out for quite a while longer. And their factory just simply was not putting out very many of these. They were all being built in Fremont, California at the time. And well, the Model S still is, but it's just not a very big quantity vehicle. And to be honest, for the average person, this was way out of reach. We're looking at 6 digits in terms of cost for this vehicle for sure. So when I was looking for my first electric vehicle, this simply wasn't in the cards for me. So I had to pass on it, although it certainly was tantalizing, interesting, and a car that I think I would have really enjoyed at the time. And of course, over the years, things have changed and they're a bit more available now. But yeah, so this was what 2012 had available for us. And so then we move on to the next one here, and this is the Nissan Leaf. And this car has been around since 2011 is when they were first being introduced into North America. So really, in terms of high volume production electric vehicles, this was the first one really in North America. There were a few limited production vehicles, but this one was certainly the highest production vehicle at the time. And it's as you know, it's a mid-size little hatchback vehicle, and it had a 24 kilowatt hour battery. By the way, the Model S had 3 choices of batteries: 40, 60, and 85. Although they weren't selling the lower capacity ones early on, they wanted to sell the high capacity ones. But anyway, this one came with a 24 kilowatt hour battery, and the range was purported to be around 100 miles when it was brand new, although that was rarely achievable. 80 miles is more realistic, and then if you threw some cold weather at it and some battery degradation, that number goes down from there. Now, this car was still fairly expensive at the time. It was right around $40,000 to $45,000. And for a small hatchback at that time, you can get a regular gasoline hatchback for somewhere in the $20,000 range, even the high teens. So it was a pretty big pill to swallow for folks to consider this vehicle. Now, certain jurisdictions did have some rebates at the time, but they weren't widely available. And so that was option number 2 when I was looking for my first electric vehicle, but still fairly pricey at the time. And then option 3 was this one, the Mitsubishi IM, which is probably the least well-known vehicle out of all these. And it's actually been around since 2008, but it was in Japan. It's called a key car, and it was available since 2008 in Japan. But it didn't come to North America until 2012. And so that's when these 2 or 3 vehicles all kind of sort of landed at the same time. Now looking at it, it is definitely a small vehicle, and it's a city runabout type of a vehicle. It's not made for road trips. It's not made for long distance. You can drive it in the highway. Its top speed is around 75, 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers per hour. So it does do highway speeds for sure. And the battery size on it is maybe the most interesting. It has a 16 kilowatt hour battery in it. It's pure electric, just like the other 2, and it doesn't have a great range. I think originally they said the range was somewhere around, again, 70 or 80 miles. It is a little bit more efficient in terms of its energy use compared to the Leaf, and it is a smaller, lighter car. So the range originally was approximately the same, but of course, if you throw some cold weather at it and you throw a little bit of battery degradation at it, it starts to reduce its range. But still, interesting car. So if you were in 2012 and you were like me and you had these 3 choices to pick from, which would you pick? And I'm sure for a lot of us, or many of us, or all of us, budget is one of the top considerations in the vehicles. And can you swallow buying these little cars? So the Tesla Model S for sure was out. I just wasn't going to spend $100,000 on a vehicle. It just was not possible or logical. So around this time I was looking to get a different vehicle, and I was really interested in getting some better fuel economy. I was doing still am doing a lot of driving, obviously one of the things that what does Dad tell you to do if you want to save a bit of money on a car? Well, buy one that's a couple years old, right? So buy one that's 2 or 3 years old, it's used. The initial shock of depreciation, initial shock of the depreciation off the MSRP is gone. But at that time, there were no used electric vehicles. It just simply didn't exist. It wasn't even an option. So you're basically stuck with choosing a little car, which is now this one here, the Mitsubishi, was of course the least expensive of the 3, and it had around a $33,000 amount. By the way, all the numbers I'm quoting are US dollars. Around 33,000. The Leaf was around 40 to 45, and the Tesla is over 100,000. So those are the choices. So did you want to spend that much money? Again, at $33,000, you can get a super nice, you can get a brand new, top of the line loaded Toyota Camry at the time for that price. You can get, a nice Honda CR-V. There was lots of choices of vehicles at the time for the same price. And so then you've got to take into account, why do I even want one of these? And because I was driving so much, because I was spending a lot of money on fuel, that's one of the reasons why I was able to convince myself that buying an electric vehicle is the right one. And so I'd like you to leave a message there below in the comments for me. Which vehicle do you think I eventually ended up buying? I did buy one of these. What do you think you would have chosen at the time? I know for the experts out there were other vehicles like the RAV4, Toyota RAV4 electric, but those were only available in certain areas. I think California was the only place they sold it, and that actually has a Tesla drivetrain in it. But I didn't include that here just simply because they weren't available widely. These vehicles were available all across Canada and the United States. We're really lucky these days to have such a great choice of vehicles available to us. We've got all kinds of trucks and cars and SUVs, and if you don't want to spend brand new prices, you can pick something up in the used range as well, and they can be quite economical. And then I guess that also, I'm sure one of the questions you'll have in your mind is, how have these vehicles held up over the years since they were built in 2012? And I'm going to be having a separate video for each of these vehicles. We'll go through it in depth. And the interesting thing is, none of them have had new batteries installed, by the way. Just a little teaser there for you. None of them have had new batteries. They all are on their original battery pack from brand new. But there is, of course, some degradation, and we'll go into that and talk about what that means. But you've still got vehicles here that are very usable, and in the used market are quite reasonably priced now. So if you're just looking into getting an electric vehicle and you don't want to spend a lot of money, these are the types of vehicles you can get into for quite inexpensive. Even newer ones that are in the 2017, 2018 range are also getting to be quite reasonable. So just wanted to share these with you, some vehicles in the collection, and we'll be doing a little tour of each of them, give you the idea of what electric vehicles were like back at the time. And it was quite a different world back then, I have to tell you. There just was not a lot of choice available. But you know, things have progressed a long way, and batteries have progressed a long way, and even battery sizes. Of course, the new cars travel a lot further than these old ones did, even when they were new. But even as city runabouts, these are still great cars for getting you A to B. So leave me a message in the comments. What do you think the vehicle was that I purchased as my first EV? And for future videos, we'll be taking a look at these ones each in detail, specifically these ones, just to show what does an old EV, what does an old EV look like in terms of its usability, of its capacity. You know, is it at this point in their life, when they're this old, are they just junk? Are they ready for the scrap heap, or do they have some usable life left? And we can talk about that as well. Also, if there's any comments, questions, specific things you'd like me to show you on the vehicles as I do that tour. I haven't filmed that yet, but please leave that in the comments as well. I'd be glad to show those to you. You know, these are really the forerunners of the modern EVs. And I know that, you know, one could argue that the GM EV1 from 1997 was the first one, and yes, I can't dispute that. Again, that was a very limited release vehicle. There's only a couple thousand made, only available, I think, in California. So, you know, those simply weren't available to the average buyer. So these were the first vehicles really in wide release that were available pretty much from any dealership across US and Canada, at least for Mitsubishi and for Nissan. And of course, Tesla has their own unique way of selling their vehicles online, and that was the way it was done back then. There was simply no dealerships at all. There was maybe a couple of showrooms, very limited availability, and you had to be on a wait list, of course, and then the price is super high. So yeah, so I didn't pick the Tesla. Yeah, so it's between these two. And yeah, these were the original ones. So let me know your questions and comments on these, and we'll go through them each in detail. And then I'll tell you which one ended up being mine for the first several years of EV ownership. Okay, well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We've got a lot more to take a look at with the future videos here with these ones. If you found this video interesting or informative, feel free to leave me a thumbs up and consider subscribing for future videos. And thanks a lot for watching, and have a great day.